The cenote wasn't on any map, and the first depth scan didn't come back. I've mapped sinkholes all over the Yucatan Peninsula. Most of them follow the same pattern: collapsed limestone, clean vertical drops, sometimes branching tunnels if the system is old enough. Predictable. That's the whole point of the job. This one wasn't supposed to be there. We were working just outside Tulum, updating outdated hydrographic data. Remote survey only. No diving, no physical descent. Routine contract. Until we found the opening. It looked wrong immediately. Not damaged, not unstable. Too clean. Perfect circle. No debris around the rim. No signs of a recent collapse. Like it had always been that shape. We set up at the edge and dropped the probe. Water clarity, normal. Temperature, normal. Depth, cut off. Not maxed, not interference. Just nothing. I remember staring at the monitor longer than I should have, because systems don't just stop returning data like that. Not cleanly. I ran a second pass. Same result. That's when the file appeared. No notification. No sender. Just a document sitting in the dataset. I opened it. Cenote Survey Guidelines. 1. Do not lower probes beyond signal loss. 2. Do not attempt vertical descent after depth discontinuity. 3. Do not map structures beyond first layer reflection. 4. If sonar returns geometric patterns, stop scanning. 5. Do not enter the water after irregular returns. 6. Avoid scanning during low light. 7. Do not triangulate multiple cenotes simultaneously. 8. If depth readings stabilize below expected limits, withdraw equipment. 9. Do not mark the site in official systems. 10. If structures appear artificial, cease all observation. It didn't read like protocol. It read like something written after someone made mistakes. I should have stopped there. Instead, I ran a third pass. I told myself I wasn't breaking anything, just confirming the anomaly. The probe dropped again. At first, everything looked the same. Then something came back with the signal. Not noise. Structure. Faint. Below where the depth should have ended. I didn't zoom, didn't enhance, but it resolved anyway. Straight lines. Angles. Not natural. I pulled the probe up immediately. Too late, because I had already seen enough. That night, I went back to the data. I didn't rerun the scan, just reviewed what I already had, frame by frame. The shapes became clearer the longer I looked. Columns, flat surfaces, stairs, descending into darkness that shouldn't exist. I leaned back, because at that point, it wasn't a formation anymore. It was architecture. I ran a lateral scan, not down, across. The signal moved through open water and hit something solid, flat, continuous. A wall, then another, and another, extending outward. Not just a structure inside the sinkhole, a layout, a city. I shut everything down because I finally understood what the rules meant. They weren't stopping you from discovering something. They were stopping you from seeing too much of it. The next morning, the cenote looked different. Same location, same opening, but smaller. Not by much, just enough to notice if you'd seen it the day before. I checked the coordinates twice. They matched. But the shape wasn't exactly the same. I told the team we were done, packed up, moved on. I didn't explain why, because there's no way to explain something you're not supposed to confirm. That night, I made one last mistake. I opened the data again. The structures were still there, but they had changed. The layout wasn't identical. A staircase shifted, a column missing, subtle, but wrong, like it had been rearranged between observations. I didn't touch anything. Didn't run another scan, just watched. And then I noticed movement, not debris, not current, something moving between the structures, slow, deliberate. I stopped breathing for a second because it wasn't random. It paused, then shifted direction toward the center of the frame, toward where I was looking. The structures around it, aligned, not physically, conceptually. The layout became clearer, more complete, and I understood what was happening. It wasn't reacting to me. It was using me. Observation wasn't revealing it. It was building it. Each scan, each pass, each second I spent looking, added detail. I shut everything down, pulled the drive, disconnected the system, sat there in the dark, because for the first time, I knew it wasn't just something buried. It was something incomplete, and every time someone mapped it, they were helping it become something that could exist all at once. A few days later, I got an email. No sender, no subject, just an attachment. A map of the Yucatan Peninsula. covered in points, cenotes, hundreds of them, all connected, not by lines, by alignment, angles, distances, a pattern. I didn't study it long. I didn't need to, because I could feel it immediately. If you stood in the right place, looked at enough of them, it would resolve. Not as separate sinkholes, as one continuous structure, spanning the entire peninsula. The one I found was just the part I saw first. I closed the file, didn't save it, didn't respond, because I finally understood. This isn't a lost civilization. It's not something underwater. It's something incomplete, waiting to be seen enough times from enough angles to finally become something that isn't hidden anymore. And I don't think it was ever meant to be finished in a place that still exists above it. I thought that was the end of it. Delete the file. Stop taking contracts in the region. Don't look at anything that drops clean into darkness. Simple. It lasted about a week. Then I saw it again. Not in data, in real space. I was driving inland, nowhere near a cenote, nowhere near open water, just flat terrain, scattered trees, uneven limestone breaking through the surface. Nothing that should have lined up, but for a second, it did. The dips in the ground, the spacing of the trees, the angle of the road, all of it settled into something too clean, not visually obvious, but structurally familiar. I didn't slow down, didn't stare, just kept driving, and it passed. But not immediately. It lingered, like the alignment had held just long enough to leave something behind. That's when I understood what I missed. It's not just about where you look, it's about what you already recognize. The more of it you've seen, the less it needs to show you next time. I stopped working completely after that. No surveys, no mapping, no reviewing old data, but it didn't matter, because I didn't need equipment anymore. I started noticing it in smaller ways. Reflections, shadows, the way light hits uneven surfaces at certain times of day. Not always, just enough to remind me it was still there, incomplete, but closer. I tried to avoid it, kept my focus narrow, stayed in places that felt irregular. But even irregular things start to resolve if you give them enough time. That's the part the rules never said directly. You can't eliminate the pattern. You can only delay recognizing it, and recognition is what completes it. I tested that once. I stood in a place that shouldn't have aligned, uneven ground, broken walls, no symmetry. I stayed there longer than I should have. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, it started to make sense. Not change, just make sense. Angles that shouldn't connect, did. Depth where there shouldn't be any, felt like it was there. I stepped away, too late, because I could still feel it after I moved. Faint, like I'd already crossed the point where it needed me to keep looking. That's when it becomes something else. Not something you see, something you remember, and memory is enough. A few days later, I got another message. No sender, just text this time. You've already mapped enough. I didn't respond, didn't try to trace it. Because I understood what it meant. It doesn't need new data. It doesn't need new scans. It just needs enough people who have already seen enough of it to recognize the rest without needing to be shown. That's how it finishes. Not all at once. Not in one place. Across everyone who's seen part of it. I don't look for it anymore. But sometimes, I catch myself noticing something just a little too clearly. A shadow that feels deeper than it should. A space that feels larger than it is. And I stop. Immediately, because I know if I let it settle, if I let that recognition complete, I won't just be seeing it again, I'll be adding to it, and I don't think there's much left that hasn't already been seen, not enough to keep it incomplete. And when it finally is, I don't think it will matter whether you're underwater or standing on solid ground, because it won't need to be hidden anymore. It will just be there, fully, in every place where things line up just well enough for you to realize you've been standing on top of it the entire time. I tried to forget it, not ignore it. Forget it. There's a difference. Ignoring something means it's still there. Forgetting means it stops having shape, stops being something your mind can recognize. I stayed away from anything that resembled it. No maps, no satellite images, no wide open spaces, just close environments, tight angles, things that couldn't resolve into anything larger. For a while, that worked. Days passed where I didn't feel it at all. No moments where something almost aligned. No shadows that felt too deep. Nothing. I started to believe that was enough, that if you reduced exposure, it faded. Then I had a dream, not vivid, not detailed, just structured. I was standing somewhere I couldn't identify. No landmarks, no horizon, but I knew I was above something, not physically, conceptually, like I was positioned at a point that mattered. I didn't move, didn't need to, because everything around me was already aligned, perfectly, no effort, no adjustment. and beneath me, I could feel it, not see it, feel it, the full structure, complete. For the first time, there was no sense of it being unfinished, no gaps, no missing pieces, just total. I woke up immediately, sat there in the dark, because something about that was different, not the alignment, the lack of resistance. There was nothing left that felt out of place, nothing left to question. That's what made it wrong, because before, there was always something that didn't quite fit, something that pushed back. Now, there wasn't. I got up, walked through the apartment. Everything looked normal, nothing aligned in any obvious way, but the feeling was still there, not strong, just present. Like I was already standing in the right position, without needing to adjust. That's when I realized what the dream actually was. Not a dream, a memory, not mine, but something I had already seen in pieces, finally put together without needing me to look at it directly. That's what happens at the end. Not a final discovery, not a moment where everything appears, just understanding, complete, effortless. I haven't seen anything since then, no alignments, no shadows, nothing that feels out of place, and that's worse, because it means there's nothing left that needs to form, nothing left that hasn't already been recognized enough times to exist without being observed. I still think about the rules, how they were meant to slow it, limit it, keep it incomplete, but they only worked as long as there were gaps, as long as there were places where it hadn't been seen yet. I don't think those places exist anymore, not enough of them, not enough to matter, and if that's true, then there's nothing left to avoid, nothing left to interrupt, nothing left to stop, because it's not something that's going to happen, it's something that already did. We just didn't recognize it until it was already complete, and now everything feels normal again, which is exactly what it would feel like if there was nothing left to compare it to. I didn't write anything down after that. There wasn't a point. Every time I tried, it came out cleaner than it should have, too precise, too structured, like the words were arranging themselves into something that made more sense than what I actually remembered. That's when I stopped trusting memory, not because it was wrong, because it was correcting itself, smoothing edges, removing the parts that didn't fit, making it easier to accept. I tested it once. I tried to describe the first scan. The moment the depth cut off, I remembered it as abrupt, unclear, unstable, but when I wrote it, it came out clean, like it had always made sense, like there was nothing unusual about it at all. I stopped halfway through the sentence, because that's how it finishes, not by changing what happened, by changing how you remember it, so nothing ever feels wrong. I don't think people disappear, not in the way we expect. There's no event, no moment where something is taken. They just stop being inconsistent. They fit perfectly. That's what I've started noticing now, not absence, consistency, the way people move, the way they pause, everything just slightly more precise than it used to be. Not enough to stand out, just enough that nothing feels off anymore. I saw someone today, standing completely still. Not unusual, but there was no adjustment, no shifting weight, no small movement to stay balanced, just still, perfectly. I looked away immediately, not because it was wrong, because it wasn't, and that's what made it worse. There was nothing left to push against it, nothing left that told me something wasn't right. I walked past, didn't check again, because I already knew, if I confirmed it, it would just become another thing that made sense, another piece that fit. I don't think there's anything left that doesn't, not in a way we can recognize anymore. The gaps, the inconsistencies, those were the only things that showed something was happening. Now, there aren't enough of them to notice. Or maybe, we've just stopped seeing them. Either way, it doesn't matter, because the result is the same. Everything works, everything fits, nothing stands out. And when nothing stands out, there's nothing left to question. I don't try to explain it anymore. There's no version of it that sounds wrong, no way to describe it that doesn't already feel like it belongs. So this is the last time I'm writing it down, not because it's over, because there's nothing left that doesn't already make sense exactly the way it is. And if something ever did feel wrong again, I don't think I'd recognize it as anything other than something that just hasn't had enough time yet to fit. I tried once to force something wrong, not subtly, not by waiting, by breaking it. I went out past the roads, past the cleared land, into a stretch of limestone where nothing is uniform long enough to settle. I brought tools, measured lines, marked angles, deliberately misaligned everything I could, points that didn't connect, distances that didn't resolve, shapes that couldn't close. I stepped back, waited. At first, it held. The space felt wrong again, not uncomfortable, just unfinished, like something that hadn't been corrected yet. I stayed there longer than I should have, because I wanted to feel it, that old resistance, the sense that something didn't fit. And for a moment, I did. It was faint, but it was there, a gap, real. I moved slightly, not enough to align anything, just enough to change perspective. And that's when it started, not in the space, in me. The markers, the lines, the angles began to make sense, not by changing, by becoming interpretable, connections forming where I hadn't drawn them, distances resolving into patterns I hadn't intended. I stepped back, hard, broke the view completely. The markers were still wrong, still exactly where I placed them, but the feeling didn't fully disappear. It lingered, like I had already crossed the point where it needed to be visible. That's when I understood the last part. You can't create a space that doesn't fit. You can only create a space that hasn't been interpreted yet, and interpretation is what completes it, not observation, understanding. The moment your mind finds a way to make it make sense, that's the moment it locks. I left everything there, didn't take the markers down, didn't reset the space, because I wanted to see what would happen without me. I came back the next day. Nothing had moved, every line still wrong, every angle still off, but it didn't feel the same. It felt resolved, not perfectly, but enough, like the space no longer resisted being understood. I didn't stay long, didn't test it again, because I didn't need to. That was the last confirmation. It doesn't matter how wrong something is. If it can be understood, it can be made to fit. And if it can be made to fit, it becomes part of it. There's no outside anymore, no true misalignment, just stages of understanding, some faster, some slower, but all moving in the same direction, towards something that doesn't need to change anything, because everything that looks at it eventually changes instead. I don't go back out there anymore. I don't try to break it, because I know now there isn't anything left to break. Only things that haven't been seen long enough to realize they already fit exactly the way they are. I stopped trying to resist it after that, not because I gave up, because resistance didn't mean anything anymore. You can't push against something that doesn't need to move. It doesn't force anything into place. It just waits until everything settles on its own. I started noticing how quiet everything had become, not silent, just consistent. No irregular pauses, no unexpected movements. Everything flowed the way it should, perfectly. I sat with that for a while, tried to remember what it used to feel like when things didn't. I couldn't, not clearly, just fragments, moments that didn't fully resolve. But even those felt incomplete, like I was remembering something that hadn't been corrected yet. That's when I realized there's no way to go back, not because something changed externally, because the way I interpret everything has already shifted permanently. I don't see gaps anymore. Even when I try, even when I look for them, everything connects, everything makes sense. There's always a way to understand it so that it fits, and once that happens, there's nothing left that feels out of place. I walked through the same areas where I used to notice it most, the dock lines, the container paths, all of it still there, but nothing stood out, nothing aligned too cleanly, because everything already did. There was no difference anymore between normal and what I used to call alignment. It's all the same now. That's the final part. Not that it takes over, not that it spreads, that the distinction disappears. There's no separate state, no before and after. Just one continuous structure that everything belongs to. I don't hear the sounds anymore. I don't catch moments where something almost forms, because nothing needs to form. It's already complete, and the only reason I can still say that is because I remember a time when it wasn't, but even that memory is starting to feel like something that just needed time to make sense, and now it does, completely. So this is where it ends. Not with something happening, not with anything changing, just with everything finally feeling exactly the way it was always supposed to. There's one thing I haven't said, not because I was hiding it, because I wasn't sure it mattered. Now I think it does. The first cenote, the one that wasn't on any map, it never got logged. Not officially. I didn't mark it, didn't submit coordinates. I followed that rule, and for a long time, I told myself that meant something, that maybe that one place stayed incomplete, that maybe it never got added to the rest of it. I went back, not to map it, not to confirm anything,